This is Venkat from DataQuest. Let us go over Snowpipe Streaming High Performance SDK tutorial. There are a few steps that needs to be followed. Let's see what we are going to cover in this demo. We need prerequisites of a Snowflake account and the network access, Java or Python specific packages, and few other Rust core components. In the second step, we will be configuring Snowflake. That would be done through key pair authentication, creating the required objects such as database, schema, table, roles, users. That can be done via SnowSQL. Step 2 involves creating a profile.json file that includes Snowflake related account details, username, and the private key, path, role, etc. In step 3, we will be setting up demo project. SDK supports both Java and Python, so we can cover both here. Finally, running the application either through Java or Python based on how you would set up the demo. And in the very last step, you would verify the count or the select or a type of an object on the table that is created through Snowpipe streaming. Let's see what is the architecture for how the data flows from an application to Snowflake using the high performance SDK. Let's say your application, either using Java or Python, is initiated on the client side. That triggers Snowpipe Streaming SDK. Under the hood, it uses the Rust core, uses a Snowpipe object that is created in Snowflake, and that gets loaded into the target table in Snowflake. What are the steps that are needed part of this? We need key pair authentication for seamless Snowflake connectivity, pipe object for better throughput. We will have a default pipe object or a custom built pipe object for in-flight transformations. We could use Java or Python, same SDK features that shares Rust core, ensures consistent performance. Validating a variant column that maps Java, that uses a pass map Java, or a dictionary object in Python, not the JSON strings. What each component here does is the first key value pair authentication that will be used to connect to the Snowflake. When the application is initiated, that sends the raw objects. There is no staging needed. And in the Snowpipe streaming SDK, that just uses the pipe object to buffers and flushes it every 1 second. Eventually, it validates the schema and transforms in flight with the pipe object. And then finally, it gets loaded into the table and can be queried. The prerequisites needed. We discussed about having a Snowflake account with required grants such as account admin or user admin to create the users, roles, and databases. We should also ensure that we have required network access outbound to Snowflake plus S3 or GCP or Azure. Adjust the firewall for REST API calls. We also need SDKs, Java or Python, whatever we will be using. It is also requiring the Rust core LDD version in terminal. SDK and sample code, we can get it from GitHub like Snowflake DB, Snowpipe Streaming SDK examples. So to check the network, you would initially curl connecting to snowflakecomputing.com with your account. We can also check the connectivity to AWS or Google via curl commands from the terminal. Step 1. Configure Snowflake objects. What are our objects needed for this? Initially, we have to generate a key value pair for using OpenSSL that will be used in a profile file that can connect to the Snowflake account. The steps are provided here that will generate both public and private key. And there needs some Snowflake SQL setup, which creates a user and a role, and granting the role to a specific user, alter the user to set to use the RSA public key that was created, creating the database, creating the schema, and creating table with a variant column that can map to a dictionary if it is through Python, or it's a pass map if it is for Java. Creating an authentication policy is optional, but if we want to enforce key pair only logins, we would need to use authentication policy. Let's see here a clear one-on-one map between the steps that we will be creating with the SnowSQL command. The first one states create user and role. You have create or replace user my user, and create role if not exists my role, grant my role to the user my user. This is all done through account admin or user admin. Then set the public key pair authentication for user to seamlessly connect to Snowflake account. You would set that by altering the user and set RSA public key to the public key that is generated through OpenSSL. Set the default role. Default role is a my role that is created in the first step. Create DB schema and table that we would be loading the data into. If you take a close look at here, the data type is variant for data column. And the last step is authentication policy, which is optional. What it means, it's authentication policy key pair only. If it is, we are not using key pair, it is optional. So if you take a look at the syntax here, it's create or replace authentication policy, a test auth policy. Authentication method is key value pair. You would say is key pair. Client types is drivers. And then alter user my user set authentication policy to the test authentication policy that we set. Because we mentioned its authentication method is key pair, we would be using the key pair that is already assigned. Configuring authentication profile. So you need to understand to which Snowflake user account and what user, the URL that it needs to connect, the private key that it needs to read, and the roles and the privileges that are required. You would set all of them in profile.json and place it in the root directory of your project alongside form.xml or example.py for Python. The SDK reads this file automatically at the startup. There's no hard-coded credentials if you closely observe here. Setting up a demo project. If you are familiar with Java, you would use pom.xml dependency and set your SDK version. If not, if you are more of a Python guy, leverage Snowpipe streaming package using pip install. Run the demo application. How do you run the application? Let's say if you are from a Java background, you use Maven clean install and then run the main class. If you are from a Python background, go to the directory where all of your Python files are created and use Python with example.py that you have created. So what this does, it reads profile.json, authenticates via key pair, opens a streaming channel, and sends sample rows with a data type variant and column 1 as number and column 2 as string, and then uses the SDK that buffers and flushes to Snowflake. Finally, the data appears in my main table within seconds. So this is the flow that how a Snowpipe streaming high performance architecture can be leveraged. Verify the data. Once you completed your Python script or Java Maven install and then initiating that Maven dependency, validate the data, connecting to Snowflake and verifying the row count and top 10 records to verify if the data loaded into the table. The whole test we were doing is whether the data type is using variant or not. So when you take a look at type of the data as data type, if it produces the variant, then your test is successful. Reviewing the results, like data type equals to object, correct. Native map dictionary was passed and stored as a structured variant object. If data type is given as varchar, then there is a problem. A raw JSON string was passed. The fix that we need to do is use a native map or dictionary object instead. With that, it clearly completes the tutorial that configures Snowflake objects, set up key pair authentication, install the SDK needed, streams the data via channels, uses a pipe object, and verifies the ingestion. And these are the steps that you can leverage for any project when you are using Snowpipe streaming SDK high performance architecture.